Well, James Franco, you're having an incredible December, I must say. We're going to talk about the movie itself in a moment, but Golden Globe nominations, SAG Award nomination, Critics' Choice nominations. Tell me what all this means to you personally.
It means a lot. It means a lot. I've been down the awards path before with 127 Hours, a bit with Milk, and but this is the first time I've had a project that I directed that's getting this kind of attention, and it's really, I don't know, it's humbling, it's gratifying, and more than that, this project is also really special to me, not only because in very strange ways, maybe more ways than I'd like to admit, that the subject matter is very personal to me, but this is a project that involves my family, my brother, my sister-in-law, but also so many of my good friends. You know, Seth Rogen is a friend and collaborator for 20 years now, and it's just a real special project to me, and it sort of feels like a culmination of everything that I've done for the past 20 years.
I want to ask you this about the movie. In terms of awards, nominations, wins, I was just speaking to a friend last night who was back at home and saying, you know, what kind of movies are you interested in? And I got to see this disaster artist is getting nominated for everything. What does a group of nominations, recognition within the industry mean to a movie itself?
It's interesting because awards certainly, get people to pay attention to a film. It raises its profile, and it's very, very helpful in that way. But our movie has this. Our movie seems to have like two different faces to it, or something, where we are getting a lot of award recognition and great critical response, but audiences have really taken to our movie. There's such a nice energy that I just love being around. And the first weekend I went around to different theaters in LA and introduced it, and then just sat in the back like they didn't even know I was there, and it just felt so good. I mean, people were having such a good time, and so it's almost like this movie is weirdly schizophrenic, because it seems to be a huge audience pleaser in the way of it's just like a crowd pleaser, but it also it seems to hit some sort of deeper, more, I don't know, chord where people are recognizing the real effort we put into it. And I guess I say that because it is a comedy, and generally speaking, comedies haven't gotten as much recognition as dramas, but I guess maybe our movie also has the heart of a drama. It is a love story, it is a relationship story, a friendship story at its heart, and it is about following your dreams. And so, and it also, in some ways, is different than a lot of the movies that are up for awards this season, because it is comedic, and all I can think is, in this time, it's nice to have something that feels good to watch. It's very relieving, I think, and in that sense, I think maybe important.
And funny on purpose, unlike The Room, which people were laughing at, but not for the reasons they wanted it to.
Yeah, our movie is funny on purpose, although it's not like it's not a spoof. It's not like a regular comedy. It's one thing that I hear a lot from people that watch it, is that they say, I was laughing. I haven't laughed that much in a long time, but at the same time that I was laughing, I was feeling so much. it's hilarious, but it's also moving and sad, and the fact that you have that happening at the same time, because in our movie often the more dramatic scenes or the scenes where my character is hitting some sort of bottom are also some of the more funny scenes, and I guess we were sort of blessed with the subject matter, that we knew there were going to be so many absurd circumstances, but that underneath it was a very moving, almost hero's journey, regardless of how crazy and silly the movie that they actually made was.
I think as an audience member, though, from what I could gather, other audience members just like me can sense your love and respect for the people that you're portraying.
Yeah, I mean, our game plan from the beginning was to always make Tommy and Greg sympathetic. And we were really cued by the book, The Disaster Artist, because if all we had was the movie The Room, which I think is fascinating and I love watching, and I love going to the theaters and watching The Room. It's such a great, weird theatrical experience. But the book showed us that there is a very sort of moving universal story about outsiders and dreamers underneath the bizarre, thing that is The Room. And that was always what we were aiming for, is to give dignity to their story, nobility to their story, because it's basically every creative person's story, and everybody that comes to Hollywood has to start somewhere, and most people have to struggle. It's a very hard business, and it's not just Hollywood, any creative endeavor, or and so by elevating their struggle, or at least not even elevating, just by making their struggle relatable and universal, we could tell a bigger story than just the story of the making of the best, worst movie ever made.
I love the fact that the movie opens already giving you some great moments, but also a couple of sympathetic moments with the acting class. That's a perfect way to, I think, set up everything and show who both of your main two characters really are right at the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, actually, Allison Williams from Girls and Get Out wrote me a great email today. She was like, she broke down her interpretation of the relationship between Greg and Tommy so well. And one of the things she talked about was how in that scene in the acting class, she understood why Greg, a seemingly stable guy, would follow Tommy, a seemingly kind of eccentric and in some ways unstable guy. And one of the things Tommy did is he really went for it. He was unafraid. He might have been marching to his own drum, but at least he did it without fear. And that is one of the things that I think the young Greg had. He was just too self-aware, too full of fear to really kind of throw himself into his craft, and so you can see them coming together. Yeah, Tommy's rendition of A Streetcar Named Desire, the famous Stella scene where Brando was calling up to Stella's balcony, Stella, and all that Tommy really knows is that one word, Stella, that he just repeats multiple times as he crawls up the scaffolding of the stage and jumps down. That on one level that's completely absurd and ridiculous and a misinterpretation of the scene. On the other hand, young Greg can look at that and say, wow, what guts, what balls, and I need some of that. and that in the end of the movie, towards the end of the movie too, Greg returns the favor, where Tommy can tell Greg, look, you need to just go for it, like Nike, just go for it, just do it, Greg can return the favor for Tommy and help him look at his own work with a new pair of glasses and understand it in a new way.
He's one of the most confident people I've ever seen in real life or on film. He believes and trusts every instinct, every word that comes out of his mouth.
I mean, Tommy Wiseau is strange. Yes, his confidence is his armor. I believe, my interpretation is that he was told no all of his life, was constantly rejected. And the only way that he was ever going to get anywhere was to believe in himself. And preparing for the role, I couldn't really go to Tommy and ask him about what he was thinking or feeling when he made The Room, because he's a great rewriter of history, right? And that's also part of his defense. But what I did have were these recordings that he had made 20 years ago, driving around in his car. He would talk into this mini tape recorder, and he would talk about his intimate feelings. Now Tommy knows I have these tapes now. He calls them the secret tape. I know you have a secret tape. And in these tapes, I got to see the way he would boost himself up. He would, for example, complain about acting teachers on these tapes. All the teacher, he don't understand me, he make fun of me, or he don't treat me like other students in class. And then you'd hear him rewrite the script or boost himself up. While I think he sensed my power and he intimidated. That's why he treated me that way. And you know what? Maybe his class no good, Maybe I'll go and do my own thing. Maybe I'll make my own movie. And there you have, in a nutshell, the way Tommy went from facing a mountain of rejection to deciding to make his own movie. And you see that that's the only way he was ever going to get anywhere, is to just pull together enough, will and self-generated confidence to get this thing done. And then after it was made and people laughed, again he had to sort of rewrite the script and say, well, I intended to be comedy, and so now if you go to a room screening and he does Q&As, people ask him questions. Come on, did you really intend it to be that way? He's got that defense. Yeah, of course I intend to make it that way. I'm the greatest director, And that's that's sort of his survival mechanism.
As the director, one thing I loved about this, just sort of feeling it from the outside in, is you get to boss around one of your best friends, Seth Rogen, your brother, Dave Franco, and one of your first bosses, Judd Apatow. I thought, you must be having a ball telling these people what to do.
No. No, I mean, notoriously, Seth Rogen or my brother will tell you, I stayed in character while I was directing The Disaster Artist, right? Because I was playing a director that was acting in his own movie, who was I directed the movie and acted in it, playing a director that acted in his own movie. So it was easier to just stay in character. But I didn't go so far into character that I was, dictator, right? Like Tommy, He says in our movie, the word director come from dictator, rest my case. Okay, so I didn't do that. I have been working with Seth Rogen for almost 20 years. Freaks and Geeks was, I think, almost 20 years ago, which also was obviously produced and written by Judd Apatow and Paul Feig, and so what Seth and I learned from Judd, and then what I practiced on all of Seth's sets was a very collaborative kind of working, often improvisation, but the sets, the dynamics on those sets, on Seth's sets, which were derived from the way Judd's sets worked, were very fluid. That there was, very specific kinds of people were involved and asked to be on these movies as actors and writers and producers, and everybody could contribute ideas and for the scene or lines and so that's how I was trained. And so now when I'm on the set as the director and actor and producer, and Seth's there as a producer actor, and then Judd comes on, like, we're all just used to that collaborative mode. And so it doesn't really matter that I was the director, it wasn't like, oh, I'm bossing everybody around. It was more, that we all know how to do this thing, and it feels more like musical chairs in a way, and so it was I would say collaborative and not a dictatorship.
A lot of people over the years that have played real life people and then gone on, say, to the Globes, like you are, and hopefully the Oscars, have brought that person to the ceremony. Is that something you could imagine doing with Tommy?
Yeah, well, I asked him the other day. We just did the commentary for the DVD, and Tommy was there with Greg and the writers and my brother, and I asked Tommy, all right, because a lot of people have asked the question that you just asked, and so I said, Tommy, would you rather go to the Golden Globes or the SAG Awards? And he goes, well, how about both? And I feel like in this case, yes, I want to take Tommy. I feel like taking him to these awards is even more of a kind of sweeter situation, because when Tommy made The Room, he had financed it himself for $6 million. It doesn't look like it was $6 million, but he made it for $6 million, and he made back $1,800 on his first run. But he, despite that, kept it in theaters on his own dime for 2 weeks to qualify for the Academy Awards. He obviously didn't get nominated, but I feel like now that we're getting this recognition, it's so kind of heartwarming for me to be able to take him there and give him that, that sort of make that dream come true in a way.
Last time you were nominated at the Oscars, your only other time, you were also hosting, so you didn't get to enjoy that experience like all the other first-time nominees.
No, I did not. That was so crazy.
Would you have done anything any different off of that experience?
Yes. Here's I think Peter Sellers had some crazy line, like, if you could go back and change anything in your life, what would it be? And I think he said, I would not have read The Magus. I don't know, I guess a book he hated or something. But for me, it was like, yes, I would not host the Oscars. Now, that being said, I think that experience taught me a lot. Yes, I had to learn a lot of lessons in public. It's just the way my life goes. I do have to learn things in public, and sometimes they're embarrassing or things that I'm less than proud of. But I see in hindsight, that when they asked me to host the Oscars, it was probably around this point in time in the calendar. I hadn't yet been nominated for an Oscar, but it was looking hopeful. And I realize now I was so full of anxiety and discomfort from the attention, and also maybe even from the prospect of, losing, that I couldn't just go and enjoy that. I couldn't go and just be there and enjoy the fact that I was one of 5 people in the whole world up for this, award that year. So instead I said, yes, I will host the awards as sort of a defensive, this was my defensive move, to sort of project this idea that, well, I don't care, I'm above this, I'm an artist, I don't care if I win or not. When in fact, that very move, taking that huge move of hosting the whole Oscars just to sort of show that I didn't care, shows that I cared so much. And so hopefully I'm a little wiser now. I think it's about 7 years later. And having gone through that experience and realizing what was going on, I can now just be grateful that there's even discussion about awards, and that I've been nominated for the awards that I have been nominated for, and really just be humble and grateful and really happy that people are responding to the movie that I made with my family and friends. It's really I'm very moved by it.
Last question. This past weekend, you went back to host Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
It's been a while since you had hosted there. How is this experience different with a little time to reflect?
It's been about 3 years. It was my 4th time hosting, and it was so great. It was my favorite of the 4. And then in addition to hosting 4 times, I actually made a documentary about Saturday Night Live called Saturday Night. I think it's on Hulu. And when John Malkovich hosted about 8 or 9 years ago, and I love that place. And this was the sweetest of the 4. I've learned, and I learned it the first time, but I love the process of just turning myself over to those great writers and the great actors and just the whole process. And it's such a great lesson for me of releasing control. That I have some talents that I can bring to this, but I don't need to control everything. And in fact, when I do release control, and I'm working with, obviously talented people, that the results are better than I could ever achieve on my own. And so, and somehow SNL, it's just such a great teacher of that lesson. And I felt great. I felt great to turn myself over. I feel like they wrote me at least 3 classic sketches. The spelling bee and the lawyer that's arguing about lasagna is referred to as Zod pizzas, and this gift wrapping sketch where I cut my fingers and blood sprays everywhere, and I ended up spitting blood, and they got into Leslie Jones's mouth, and she almost, if you go watch the sketch, she's actually almost getting sick on live television. She and I laughed about it afterwards, but it was, in the moment, it was incredible. And you see Kenan Thompson, who never breaking, and cracking up. And that was incredible. And they wrote me one, really sweet pre-taped thing where with this situation where I play this seemingly homeless person, and then it turns out that it's me in character, and so it with Cecily, and it was just so good, and it was all Because I just turned myself over to the process and didn't try to control anything.
Well, as I said right off the beginning, you are having a fantastic December. Maybe nobody in entertainment's having a better December than you.
Oh, thank you.